Hi, everybody. Welcome to Talking Data Equity for Friday, October 3rd. My name is Heather Kraus, and I am a mathematical statistician and the founder of an organization called We All Count. And the purpose of We All Count is to kind of break through the myth that quantitative data is value neutral, and that if we just follow some magic magic recipe, we will end up with numbers that are value neutral. And of course, that's the human consequences and the mathematical consequences of that are very serious. And so we want to learn kind of practical tools that help us grow our competence at aligning the choices that we make in any kind of a data project with the purpose and the priorities and the context of that project. So that's what We All Count does. And one of my favorite activities is that most Fridays, not every single Friday, but most Fridays, we host something called Talking Data Equity. And that's what you've found your way to here today. I know lots of you are familiar faces, and that makes my heart so warm when I see our community gather on Fridays. And this Friday, a lot of you are new. So I'm very, very excited to see some new faces. So let me give you a little bit of a sense of how this works. This is a Zoom meeting, which means that you have control over the way that you want to put your microphone and put your video. And so you can be on screen or not on screen, whichever suits your way of feeling in community and learning. And you can also turn your microphone on or off as you would like. And today we have a very, very cool special guest, and I'll introduce her in just a second. But just to let you know, in terms of asking questions, we're really gonna have more of a discussion today, a lot like we did a couple weeks ago with Dr. Chris Anderson on decolonizing quantitative data. We're gonna have a discussion today in which Michelle, our special guest, is gonna introduce a very cool set of ideas and tools that her and her team are developing and publishing. And we're going to have a conversation about it all along the way. So at any point during this hour, if you have a question, or a comment or a reflection, you have a couple of options. You can put it into the Zoom chat if you would like. If you want to put it privately into the Zoom chat. So in other words, if you want to ask your question, but you don't necessarily want to ask it to everybody who's here, you can always direct message me with your question and I'll amplify it without attaching it to your name. Or you can put it in the general chat and we would love that. And if you'd like to turn your microphone on and make a reflection or ask a question at any point, we really welcome that today. And because there's, about 150 of us probably going to be here today. If you can see how to raise your hand in the Zoom reactions part and raise your little Zoom hand, that'll allow us to kind of be able to take turns without reading social cues because we're not in the same room. But if you can't find your reaction button or can't figure out how to do that, you can just turn your microphone on and ask a question. We're a small enough informal community that is totally cool. Last piece of logistics is I'm going to put in the chat the link to our We All Count Data Equity Community Forum. And that is the place where the recording from today and all of the resources from today will be found. So we are definitely going to be sharing a lot of resources today. And you will find those resources at that link. And I'm also going to share one more resource before I introduce Michelle. This is the resource to the main tool that Michelle is going to be talking about today. All right, so let me introduce you to our very, very special guest today. Rev. Michelle Smith is the co-founder and co-director of an organization called Circle Forward. And Michelle has over 25 years of experience working with groups for a regenerative future based around the whole community. Michelle provides training, coaching, facilitation, and strategic co-design, and she specializes in pro-social methodology to help groups become more cooperative, more adaptable, and more resilient, all with an equity lens. And she hosts the weekly Regenerative Governance online session of the Global Regeneration Collab and a bi-monthly online NVC practice. And we will make sure, of course, that you get links to all of that. And I have to say that from interacting with Michelle over the past couple of months, I know that Michelle, you're extremely busy producing and publishing and just keeping everything organized. And so I'm really, really grateful that you made time to be with us today and join us. And so let me turn it over to you to tell us a little bit about what got you interested in this area and what your first couple of projects where you got these ideas were.
Sure. Thanks, Heather. It is so glad to be I'm so glad to be here. It's really great. I'm very excited because when I saw the data equity framework, I was like, oh my goodness, this consent-based decision-making protocol goes with the framework like peas and carrots. So, but let me just tell you a little bit about this consent-based decision-making protocol, um, and how it came about. Um, my business partner Tracy and I, and our other co-director Dee Washington, we've all been working in this realm of governance, collaborative governance for groups, and particularly for networks. Think multi-sector, multi-stakeholder networks pushing towards social impact. So those might include businesses and nonprofits and research and the community where things are actually the impact we want to happen. In multi-sector, large landscape conservation, public health, um, economic development, food systems. Food systems is really where we got our start in this network space. So a small team. So how it kind of the protocol all started was Tracy in particular was the lead on this, and it was a statewide project in Alaska, and it was a network for that state. And a small team were meeting regularly, and they really had this question about structure, where to include people in decisions that affect them, in the ones that, or in which they have an interest, even those people who were new to the alliance, who hadn't been like designing and developing the alliance all along. And how do we do that while we're still making timely decisions that move us forward into action? So we're not always going back to the beginning. And they were also, this group particularly was practicing a deep equity. Uh, so a deep equity in terms of the people, the populations. People were urban, people were rural, people were Alaska Native, people were European descent, people were uh, other other heritages. Um, just diverse. People were wealthy, people were not, like there was all kinds of diversity. And they wanted that deep equity, and they wanted to be able to bring their whole selves into the work. And the work group really kind of became a healing space for a lot of the people who were working there. Um, and it and they said so. One Alaska Native woman, she was middle-aged, she was in recovery, and she would say um, that this was one of her great places that helped her even after several traumas she'd had. And um, so the thing, and I'm going to show y'all this protocol in just a minute, and I want to just say that the map is not the territory. Consent is not a set of check boxes. It's an experience, and this protocol can really help guide. And as I said, I was super excited to see it with the framework, because I immediately said, oh my goodness, at each stage of the framework, this protocol can be applied to actually actualize the values and goals of the framework. So uh, I'm wondering if there's anything else I want to say real quick before I share. I don't think so. So I'm going to share my screen and let me get it fitted a little bit better, the protocol. Get us on a slideshow. Uh-oh. Wait, not yet. And all right, sharing the screen. There we go. And making a slideshow out of it. Okay. So the link you have is just published, literally published Monday. But we've been working on it, and it's really accumulation of 12 years of our work. Um, and the guide that you have really unpacks all of this. And this is a page in it. So you'll have basically the protocol document when you're in the guide. So let's walk through it. So the first thing you're doing, want to do is clarify your decision. What is a decision? A decision point has arisen. What is our decision? Let's clarify that. And you'd be amazed how many people don't actually like take that step to make sure everyone's really clear on the decision that needs to be made. And the next step is, well, who is authorized to make this decision? Is it mine? Am I authorized in my role? Is this team authorized in our role? Um, is is it such a new decision that nobody's authorized yet? Clarify that. And then once that's clarified, um, there may be a pathway off of that. And I can show you the pathways in just a minute because I'll show you in a minute. Okay, so then the next thing you do is you identify who to include in the process and how. Who are we going to be who are we going to include? Who's going to be impacted? Who can impact the decision? Who can help affect it to make it better? Who whose perspective do we need? Um, who's part, like how do we get as much of the whole system to participate and influence and share their perspective on this decision and how we make it. And then the next step is frame the picture. So now you've decided who's to include and how. There's a lot of ways to include people in a decision that affects them. Sometimes it'll be just a meeting, and that's pretty simple. You just can ask, do a round or whatever. But sometimes there's, of course, there's a survey, there's online community engagement, in-purpose community engagement, one-to-one conversation. You can just call people up. You can catch them, you know, where they are. Although, and then how, are we going to do this? So then from that, you begin to frame the picture. What are all the things we need to consider in this decision? What are the both ands? There may be conflicting things that need to be considered. What are, that's just it. How do we frame the picture together? What are all the things we want to remember, keep in mind, and consider? What are all the pieces of, like, it may be data, it may be story, it may be um, all the other ways of gathering that. So then you go to the next step, and that after you've got that, and everybody can see that, everybody who's from that third step, or a good representation of that, can see that whole picture together. Then you start generating ideas. So often when we clarify a decision in our culture, we just go straight to generating ideas. But in the protocol, we see there's a whole three more steps before you get to the generating ideas piece. And so then you start to generate the ideas, and particularly around that, like, what are the, how are we going to have both? How are we going, especially when there's contradictory things, how do we have both? How do we adapt for both? How do we include both of these needs, both of these considerations, both of these powerful impacts? And from there, then you shape a proposal. Who shapes the proposal? going back to step 2 and this clarify who's authorized to make the decision, one of the things you'll see in this guide is some real clarification and guidance on what does it mean to be a decision maker in this framework, in this protocol. Does it mean, well, we're the decision makers, so what we say goes? Or does it mean something a little bit different? In our case, it really means the decision stewards, the ones who are managing the process, the ones who are going through, who are managing all this process, caretaking it, and getting all this, and then they're gonna eventually be the ones to make the decision. So the next step is shape that proposal. So you shape a proposal based on all those ideas, pulling all that together, and then you test for consent. You send that proposal out back to those folks that you identified, and you can actually test for consent even more widely than that. And the question is, when you test for consent, is what you're looking for is risks. What are the risks we can't afford to take? What what's going to cause a problem to our shared purpose, the purpose of this decision, or the purpose of whatever the engagement is, our shared purpose, or to my role to participate in this purpose? What's going to harm either of those things? What's going to create a risk we can't afford to take? There's always going to be some risk. So you want to include in that proposal processes for feedback, and y'all are great, y'all know about feedback, but those processes for saying, how's this working? Stages of iteration. But you test for consent and you take it back out. Any problems, any objection. You're not looking for permission, you're looking for risks. You're looking for those harmful things that can really cause that train wreck or cause things to derail or harm to that purpose. And when you test for consent, sometimes you find that there's things we missed. We had gaps in our awareness. Oh my goodness, there's some other people we need to include. It doesn't stop everything, but it might take you back to the frame the picture again. So like then generating ideas for that new awareness, reshape, adjust, adapt the proposal, test for consent again. When the proposal has no objections, that's the decision. So again, we're not asking for permission. We're not looking for a vote. We're not asking, how do you like it? We're not asking, what do you think? What we're asking is, have we missed anything? Do you sense a risk to our shared purpose or to my role to participate in that purpose? And then it comes to the next step of make a decision. Those decision makers now have made a decision. They've got their decision. And so then it goes into the implement and observe. Now we're going to take action on that and we're going to learn. The observe part cannot be forgotten. We're going to learn. And as we learn and implement, then you're going to loop right, but new decisions are going to arise. And so you can just take it and it really never stops. It's a design process. It's an iterative design process. So I think before I take questions, I want to scroll down through the guide to I think I'm going to go stop off here for a second to talk about, to say, what's the difference between a protocol and a process? This is a page that offers a lot of clarity where the principle, and for us, the principle is consent. If the principle is consent, um, the, the protocol arises from that principle, and the process arises from, from that. And these emerge, the decision emerges, and the actions emerge. So the idea is that the action and decisions emerge, or the more concrete that emerges from the more abstract. And this will be helpful. And I can talk about it, that difference between the protocol and the process. Okay. So in this protocol, in this guide, we define that consent principle. And I can do that for you in the question and answer if you like. And then we go, there's the steps of the protocol, but then there's these three pathways because this is one of the places where the protocol really opened up for us. Because, and it's with that place or who's the decision maker. If it's just your decision and you've been authorized to make those decisions, you may be the one who just decides. You're trusted to do that, and that's just your decision. And then, things can hum along. Sometimes you're authorized to make that decision and you have a pretty good idea, a pretty good suggestion, but maybe the team is new. Maybe you're new in the role, or maybe you just, want to make sure. And so then you would circle on down to the the shape of proposal test for consent. Like you may not necessarily need to go through the whole protocol because it's kind of been gone through before this moment. And so you're just wanting to check it out. You might just be seeking advice. You might be saying, see anything? Where I've got here's a problem, here's a thing, here's my idea. Am I missing anything? And so that's pathway two. And then pathway three is a lot more just like good old-fashioned community organizing, where you really want to slow down for those better results and take it through. You don't have an idea. It's a new decision. It's come out of the blue. The environment's changed. So those are the three pathways that the guide takes you through as well. I think I'll pause there and wait for questions to see where else to take this, unless Heather, you have something specific.
Thank you so much, Michelle. This is I can see many, many people kind of just taking it all in and understanding what you're talking about. So I, of course, have lots and lots of questions, but let me turn it over to people, others in the room before I take up all the space. First of all, in case you can't see the chat, Michelle, because I know sometimes people who are sharing the screen can't, there's lots and lots of very positive
Oh,
feedback about how this is really applicable to a lot of situations that people are in right now. And there's a couple of people asking if you could walk us through maybe just briefly an example, either a hypothetical example or an example that happened in the real world, maybe that food security in the
sure.
Appalachian. Yeah, can you walk us through that? Yeah.
I will. And in fact, in this guide, there are three stories
Oh, perfect.
exact of things. And I'll tell you a food system one right now, and it's on page 30.
Perfect.
This was the Appalachian Food Shed Project, and their partners in the project were collaborating on systems change for the food system. They had a little budget of money. They've been working together for a while, and they had a budget for some small grants to help people access healthy food in their communities. Um, and so they needed to decide sort of quickly how to spend this money. And they were a diverse group of people. There were academics, there were institutional partners, there were people in community-based organizations who might actually want to apply for these mini grants. So it was a good mix of people. They had, all the diverse points of view and a good mix of the system that represented the system, but they had a disagreement. Should the community-based members help create the grant application? They had to design the grant application. And so should the community members help design that? And after all, they might want to apply for the grant themselves. So there was one professor who said no, and a community leader said yes. And they couldn't agree at the meeting, so they decided to meet separately to talk about it. And so they had this consent principle. They had already made this decision, this commitment to listening to each other and to adapting. And so instead of arguing, they asked each other, what is this risk that we can't afford to take? And the professor's concern was that he thought it might look unfair to others. It might give the impression that, things aren't fair to everybody in the region. So if the community groups helped write the application and then apply for the grants, people might not trust the team. And the community leader's concern was She was tired of, and she reflected the weariness of a lot of community members. She was tired of being invited to help make decisions, but then being pushed out when things got hard or important. And so this power dynamic had happened too often. And she said the team couldn't afford to lose the trust by treating the community members like this. So the solution, once they understood the concerns, they found an answer that worked for everybody. The community partners helped design the grant application as full team members. And they would be completely open about this when they were talking to the public. And if anyone applied for the grant, then of course they would not be on the team that chooses to receive the grant. And this would all be very transparent. So they worked it out. The concerns about fairness were relieved. And when they did this the second time, it went really a lot faster because people trusted the process.
That's a great example. Thank you
And there are
so much.
there's two more stories, and they get more powerful. I'm just gonna like give you some intrigue. Like these stories get even more powerful and more like, oh my goodness, you can see how the divergence of people can really be included. Those voices that are super divergent can be included.
There's probably never been a time that we need that more than right now.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Michelle, can you put your that doc back on the screen? Because what
Sure.
I would really love to do is you were on page 30, but can you back up a couple of pages to page 26?
I sure can.
Um,
Let me get it.
26 is a very, very interesting picture about like one more back.
Yeah, yeah,
That okay, because I think this is for me, this is I really had to learn about this in working with your protocol about um the range of tolerance and how to use that idea in the group. Can you talk to us a little bit about this? Because I think this is so concrete and
yeah,
helpful, at least to somebody who thinks the way I think. Like
yeah.
I'm not a natural community organizer, I'm a mathematician. And I
Right.
really, really liked this page.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to back this up just a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah,
Say
yeah,
that
yeah.
this falls within the section of the protocol where really the first section where we define this consent principle. And you saw this, it's a principle, it's this core belief that guides your decision, points you towards what you believe is right. Protocol becomes more like a compass. Um, okay, so we have there's several ways that we think about and define the consent principle. One is a legal and ethical principle. And we have a definition here that we like from Cornell University that defines consent as when a person voluntarily and willfully agrees to undertake an action that another person suggests. And so this idea of true consent really includes a very real power to say no and have dissent, and then have the concerns and the needs included in the decision. Um, and the next way we define it and use it is within this range of tolerance. I'm gonna come right back to this. And the third way that we think of it as a group commitment. In collaborative work, it's a commitment to communication and trust among decision makers and those who are impacted by the decision to listen to each other and adapt. Again, that word adapt, activities as needed, if there's a sense that they could cause harm. So this range of tolerance framework, this is one of the things that has lasted. Like again, Tracy and I have been working with this for 12 years, and this range of tolerance is a thing that people come back to really a lot. So it's from this sense of operating like an ecosystem. So we need to pay attention to what's unacceptable for people from different backgrounds. So you'll see that the range of tolerance, it's like a bell curve. On one side, like in the middle is like what you would prefer. It's probably your idea, or it's an idea you heard and you're like, oh my God, I love this idea. And then the bell curve goes around through what you can live with to these sides on both sides of what you cannot live with. Um, and this comes out of ecosystem science. The idea that a healthy ecosystem, all of those members of the ecosystem um, have to have the conditions that are within their range of tolerance. Um, we like to use, like you could think about a coral reef. There's a level of acidity and warmth in the ocean that they can bear, but outside that range of tolerance, they can't. We like here in the mountains, we talk about trout in a mountain stream. The water needs to be in a range of tolerance. The insects that the trout eat need the certain kind of plants within their range of tolerance. There's, all the different members in order to get something as wonderful as a coral reef or a mountain stream with trout in it, all these members. It's not super narrow, there's a range, but outside of that range, in natural systems, those species, those members of that system, they will not thrive, they will stop reproducing, they might migrate out, they might die. And in human systems, those same things can apply all the way up to sometimes people die. But in an organization or a network, what you'll see a lot of is people stop participating. Um, or you'll see, arguing in the parking lot or, other sandbagging, sabotaging, all kinds of different things that when we humans are not inside our range of tolerance, when we're out of consent with what's happening. And I will say that one of the things that our research, when we talk to people over the years, and we've gotten reflections back from people, a couple things they say. One thing they say is once they've started using consent for decision making, they never want to go back. Another thing they say is that in the practice, they notice there's a lot of inner reflection that happens. They notice how many times and all the places that they've been living outside their range of tolerance and the impacts of that. And they also notice, particularly people who are in some positional power, how often they've like just been able to sort of ignore when other people were outside their range of tolerance. And then there's also for those folks particularly a, a big light bulb and a big awakening to like, oh wow, I've been missing a lot. And look, it's not so lonely at the top. And look, it's not, I'm not carrying the burden by myself because the system becomes smarter than any one person.
Yeah, I just love
Anything
that
else?
so much. And I really like the non-binary nature of
Right.
your approach to consent. Like in all my conventional training, again, as like a data person, we mostly were trained. Well, we weren't really trained at all, but the tiny bit of training that I did get was like, if you're going to collect survey data from somebody, they have to consent. And it was very black and white, and it's like one sentence, like, I'm going to collect this data. Do you consent? Now, of course, I have learned over the years that consent is more complicated than that, and really that's not even the bare minimum for collecting data. But the idea that we could use a range of tolerance to actually understand where somebody lies in this ecosystem of consent around having their data collected is just an entirely new idea to
And
the data collection world.
right. It's like the data like the data collect the design, sorry, the design process of the the research
Right. Yes.
for one thing, and then and including some of the voices and perspectives of those who will be researched.
Hmm.
And also like what are you going to do with this research? How are you
Exactly.
extracting this from me? And then what's in it for me? Where's my benefit going to
Right.
come? How can I use this for things I care about? All those questions.
Hmm. And so in the protocol on page 5 of that document, when you get to the circle that says test for consent,
Hmm.
and there's a picture, I think, of this level of tolerance. And is that what you mean by that circle, the test for consent circle?
Yeah.
Do you have try at that point, like, are you concretely going around and kind of trying to talk to everybody that you've identified to include in the process in that previous circle, and saying, point to me on this picture where you are in terms of tolerance for this decision? Is that what you mean? Or
Nope.
what do you mean by
So
test for
thank you.
consent?
That's a great question. And so much of testing for consent is really testing for objections. It's really testing for dissent. Where is it dangerous to you? Is there harm? Is there a risk you can't afford to take? So to your first question, are you going around to everyone? I mean, was that your process? Are you talking to people in a circle around a table and then you want to be like, yeah, any objections? Or do you have a sample of the system? Like, how have you identified that you're going to include the perspectives and the voices? If it's a person and you're like, you know, I would, if it were me, I'm not a data scientist, but this is how it works in the work I do. The question is really, do you have an objection? Can you think of any risk to you for collecting this data? And I would do that before you're actually needing them to sign the paper. Maybe it's like somehow to get a sample of those folks to help let them like, is there any risk to you of me collecting this data? Because consent is not compliance and consent is not compromise. Consent is not um, something's going to happen to you if you don't consent. Like you're gonna, there's going to be some kind of negative impact on you if you don't consent. And it's also not compromise. I'm giving up something important to me, and you're giving up something important to you, so we can, move forward. Like that just leaves everybody unhappy and dissatisfied. And then when people are out of consent, they protest, they stop participating in some way. Um, so it would be interesting to think about in terms of a check, getting consent in the moment for collecting data, how to design that. But no, and the second question, nope, it's not some show us where on this, unless you want to know, unless it's interesting for some reason to know where, you're either in consent or you're not. You either sense a risk or you don't. It's either safe enough to try, good enough for now, safe enough to try, or it's not. So, and then it's not, that is a binary, like, this is not safe for me. I am sensing a risk. This is a problem. Um, and so then the question is,
Perfect.
tell me more, so that you can adapt, so that then it's like, okay, it's good enough to try.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That really, really helps me. And just taking the idea of consent as it currently exists in the data science world and bringing so much more texture and nuance. We have a great question in the chat that I'm going to amplify. The person's asking privately, and it's a very good question. Michelle, do you have any thoughts or suggestions on how we might navigate data governance groups when there is existing inequities in who gets to make the decisions? For example, community members who do not have decision-making powers, and then when we get to the test for consent step, their risks are overlooked.
Um, so I know this. Once when one is enacting the consent principle, and and the and the and I know only way I know it personally is from this protocol experience. The elephants are going to come out of the corner and sit on the table, and those inequities are going to be clear. And so, um, if there was some way for the decision makers to make sure those voices, I mean, those voices are at the decision make, are part of the actual decision making, that would be great. That would be a way. Some way to represent that was authentic. Sometimes it might be in the process of the design of how you're going to include those voices of those who are impacted by the decision. Um, and then when you hear dissent or objections, then the commitment is to adapt. It's to adapt. Again, and this is why the guide is important, and frankly, why guidance is important. That moment of how we handle objections, that's the real test of, are we in a consent culture or are we not? How we respond to objections. Um, and when things are stressful, uncertain, hurried, urgent, we tend to revert back to how we were trained, to how and the practices we know in a culture, from a culture that does not care about our consent or anybody else's. So when we work with groups, that's a lot of what we're doing, is helping them move through those moments to design, because that's where um, the real in the transformation happens and gets us out, moves us out of old patterns. We're unlearning old patterns, relearning the new practices through practice. So, without the context, it's hard for me to say exactly what we might recommend. Tracy, if something comes to mind, I know my partner Tracy's here and she might have something. I'm curious yeah, so the
Yeah,
protocol will reveal those inequities, and then folks just get to grapple with that. And that decision-making team, um, ideally, someone on that team would be out of consent with that inequity.
right. That makes a lot of sense. That one of the first things that using the protocol in the inequitable situation that's being described would help us see is exactly where those inequities are showing up. And that would allow, as you say, hopefully the people who are in decision-making power to figure out where to change, how to change the power structure so that they're actually in alignment with what they're saying they want to do. Or if what the people in power are saying they want to do is, we don't care about consent,
And
like
they have to say it out loud.
it makes it really, really clear. And then somebody else who is getting marginalized can then decide which part they want to work on. Like, do they want to try and get in decision-making power in this organization that doesn't care about consent, or in a different organization that, may care about consent? So it isn't going to fix the problem, but it's definitely going to provide us with some tools and highlight some options about how to correct the problem.
Yeah, and maybe at some point it'll make enough pain points that there'll be, people don't tend to change until it's uncomfortable, right? Things don't tend to change until
Yeah,
it's uncomfortable. So,
yeah, yeah,
if
yeah.
there's some, if there's some pain, then maybe there'll be an incentive to look and try something different. Um, and I just want to reiterate this for folks who are thinking about taking this guide and thinking about bringing this into your projects, to really, like, what some of the place to get clear is, really it is not a issue of preference. We're not trying to help. We're not trying to meet everybody's preference. That would be impossible.
Mm-hmm.
We are committed to not doing harm and not making people live out of their consent, or not making teams live out of their consent. And um, not make like because and why? It's not because we're nice. It's not because we're being nice. It's because the thing won't work as well. It might not work at all. Like, you're not going to get the result that you want.
Mm-hmm.
Consent, we find that you know, this works. This is what makes those solutions better. You get the buy-in, you get the participation. And that's why we realized the three pathways were important because, of course, folks who really do have a commitment to equity often will think, first of all, we got to get everybody in the room at the same time. That's not necessary. And also, sometimes it's just someone's role to make that decision.
Right.
And and also choosing somebody to fulfill a role, that's another decision. Like there's a whole section in here about roles and responsibility and consenting to that. And it goes through the protocol too. So
Mm-hmm.
there's that piece. And then I had something else, but I'll pause and it'll come back to me.
This is fantastic. Michelle, I don't think you can see all the positive feedback that you're getting in the chat. Somebody said this is paradigm shifting and mind expanding. So again, thank you for making time. We probably have time for maybe one or two more questions. Does anybody in the room want to turn their microphone on and share a reflection or ask Michelle? And also Tracy, if you're here and you want to jump in, I did not realize till right now or a minute or two ago that you were here. Feel free. While you are thinking about if you want to turn your microphone on, there's a really good question a couple of minutes ago. This is such a wonderfully helpful framework. Could you talk a little bit more about how you have used this framework to move decisions forward? In other words, to get in the protocol from the test for consent to the make a decision, how do you know when you're ready to move from test to consent to make a decision? And how do you tell the others that you're doing that?
When you have no objections,
Okay.
when there's nobody, and when everybody's like, it's good enough to try. And and there's no risks we can't afford to take. That's when it's pretty much decisions made. So if you've got objections, if you're hearing risks, then you figure out we're going to adapt. That's the commitment. We're going to
Mhm.
listen and we're going to adapt. And sometimes it's just a matter of like making it's like one of the things you'll hear is good enough to try, good enough for now,
Mhm.
good enough to try, safe enough to fail. Good enough to try, safe enough to fail.
Oh, wow. Can you
Which,
imagine if that was applied to data projects? That
well,
would be
maybe there's
change
a
the
way to,
world. Safe
right?
enough to
Maybe there's a way
try.
to roll it out a little bit, and
Oh,
do a
yeah.
little.
There
So
definitely is, and we definitely will be doing that. But it's just such a like the big tech thing of like fail. I'm not going to remember what it is. Somebody in the room can
fail
help me.
fast,
Like,
break things.
yes, it's like the reverse of that,
It's the
right? Like
reverse of
safe
that.
enough to fail rather
Right.
than fail fast and break things.
And my partner's a software engineer, and he totally sees this
Mm.
as adaptive and agile design. Um, you
Thank
know,
you for saying that. That's super important. That's
yeah,
really good. Thank you for saying that.
yeah. Um, so that make a decision moment, and also keep in mind, I tell you one of them, and don't like that big pink dot, and I almost wish observe was bigger. Um,
Hmm.
almost anything in the culture, in the system, in the project, whatever, you can not, I mean, you might not be perfect, right? Everything's going to be an experiment. And if you've got that feedback coming in, and I guess it's with the evaluators, it's kind of like the feedback on the feedback, right? But
Hmm.
it's that if you can just keep that coming, um, and like when I'm facilitating consent-based processes, just a little meeting with a little local community group, that
Hmm.
end of that meeting, we are getting feedback on that process today. How'd this go? So you're just
Right.
embedding feedback all the time. Now I know as evaluators, y'all are like, you know,
No, no,
want want that to be a
no.
thing, but like wanting that to, like I assume, I don't know, but I assume like y'all know the value of feedback, right? Y'all know the value of this. So anyway,
Correct.
but don't forget that. Like,
Right.
and often that's what takes it into the space of safe enough to fail because we're
Right.
not gonna wreck anything. We're just gonna wreck a little small thing and it won't matter, or we're gonna know before it wrecks anything. And be able to,
Right. This is so cool. Somebody else is asking, has Michelle or anyone else on the call used this type of consent-based approach outside of the research space? Like, have you used it in HR or employee direct reports, anything like that?
I've I'm not a researcher, so
Yeah, that's what I
right.
thought. Yeah.
So when we're in networks where evaluation is part of the
Mhm.
work, um, it has been used there.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I don't know of many research places where it's been worked. I would love to know. I would love to be a
Yeah.
part of something like that. Um, HR, and we've worked with businesses, we've worked with purpose-based businesses, we've worked with cooperatives, we've worked with organizations, and we've worked with networks. So, and then people that we've worked with, like human clients that we've worked with,
Right.
repeatedly, and in even our research, repeatedly tell us, we use this at home. We use this with our kids. We use this all the time. And
Right.
whether they're using the perfect protocol or anything, but that range of tolerance idea, that range of like, let's frame the picture first before we think about it.
Yeah.
I use it all the time. I use it.
When,
I use it with my partner. It's
right.
yeah,
Yeah, if I had had this idea when my kids were small, but now
right?
even that my kids are big, I should use it too.
You can still use it.
Yeah,
Planning the
yeah,
Thanksgiving.
yeah.
And it because when you start doing that, and there's an image of this in the protocol of a big orange arrow going straight from clarify the decision over to generate ideas. You might see that, Heather, and say the page. Um, that's where arguments start.
Right.
That's where debates start. Oh, I think we should do this. Oh, no, 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 we can't. And then now we're trying to persuade each other, and or we're gonna do that other thing where we're gonna like go around each other. We're gonna try to get power otherwhere, or we're gonna do the worst possible, well, one of the worst possible things, which is do majority rule voting.
Right.
We'll say that voting
Wow.
is a game. It is gameable. It is always gamed. There's always going to be collusion. I'll vote for yours if you vote for mine. It was better than blood feuds and absolute monarchy, but it is not a match for the complexity of life now.
Wow.
I'm just going, that's, I'm, gonna- I'll stand on Hamilton's coffee table and say it to his, it's, God love them. And, you know, it's time for a new way of making decisions in complex situations.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, you probably can't see it, but you're getting an overwhelming positive hearts, millions and millions of hearts, or probably not millions, but
Yeah.
dozens and dozens of hearts. I can't find the page. Sorry, I can't tell you the page, but you all have the access. I
Yeah.
think we're going to end on that note because that note is just getting overwhelming hearts. And we got to respect everybody's time. Everybody agreed to be here for an hour. So as you all can see, Michelle and her team are absolutely doing what we love to see at We All Count, which is really breaking through some deeply ingrained myths about what has to happen in order for us to achieve what we want to achieve. It's a whole new way of thinking about a process and a protocol and a practice. And it absolutely has been years and years and years in the making and testing and developing, and it shows. It is such a nuanced, thoughtful approach. Go ahead, Michelle.
Before we close, two
Yeah.
things. Number one, this is in the Creative Commons. This is so it's available for y'all to use. Um, there's the PDF, but there's also a slide deck, a Google slide deck, and we'll be iterating this. the slide deck today has the link to the feedback form. If you just read it and look at it and want to offer anything that we've missed or that, and then when we do the PDF again, it'll have it, but it doesn't have it right now. So please, either way,
Right?
and the other thing about the PDF is you can take chunks out. You know, that's easier to take, take a copy out and give it to a team or something. And secondly, I just want to say this guide is not enough for anybody to make the deep change. Like people underestimate what a change process this is. And like you can't change by reading a book, you change through practice and often through guided practice. So if y'all want to talk about that and what that can look like for a project that's coming up, you can reach us. You can reach us through the website.
Absolutely. Let me put their website into the link. And as I said before, we will make sure that the recording and all of the links to the PowerPoint and the PDF and the ongoing updates are included so you all can access them. And you can for sure get in touch with Michelle and her team. And thank you so much, Michelle, for making time to spend with us today. It's been a really, really valuable hour. It's just really
And so many, I'm
deeply,
seeing
deeply grateful.
seeing so many parts. And oh, y'all are the best. I knew y'all would dig it.
We definitely do dig it. Just a programming note, some housekeeping. We are not having Talking Data Equity next week. It is a holiday in Canada, and I will be traveling. So I am not here next Friday. So we're here in 2 weeks. And the person joining us in 2 weeks as a special guest is Mickey McGlasson, who works for Carnegie Mellon and is doing a bunch of making really kind of complicated environmental surveillance data available to communities.
Wow.
So local communities can prove that they're being exposed to pollution that like the companies creating the pollution, their testing says, oh no, there's no pollution. And so they've been in the news a lot, and they've made time to come and talk to us about how they're actually doing that with data. So that's in 2 weeks. And you can use the same Zoom link that you used today to get here. And again, thank you for your time. Thank you for being an amazing community. And thank you, Michelle.
Just my pleasure. Look forward to hearing more. I'm going to come to that one about Mickey.
Awesome. Yeah, it's
One
going to be
about
great. He rocks.
that.
All right. Bye, everybody. See you
Uh,
later.